Hare Krishna.
That is fine.
Okay.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please join us in the study of Srimad Bhagavatam. So today we will be studying Srimad Bhagavatam 11th Canto, chapter 19, the perfection of spiritual knowledge. Hare Krishna. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari.
Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari.
Gopi Jana Vallabha devotees, please join us for Mangalachan prayers together. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udiriyet. Shavatam Swakatha Krishna Punya Shana Kirtana Hridayantasto Bhadrani Vidhunoti Suhasatam Nashta Prayesha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevya Bhagavate Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhakti Nashtaki. Hare Krishna. Please join us in the recitation of the first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 19. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Yo Vidya Shruta Sampanna.
Yo Vidya Shruta Sampanna.
Atmavam Nanumanikaha.
Atmavan Nanumanika.
Maya Matram Idam Gyatva.
Maya Matramidam Gyatva.
Jnanam Cha Mai Sanyaset.
Jnanam Cha Mai Sanyaset.
Please.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Yo Vidya Shruta Sampanna.
Yo Vidya Shruta Sampanna.
Atmavan Nanumanika.
Atman Nanumanikaha.
Maya Matramidam Gyatva.
Maya Matramidam Gyatva.
Jnanam Cha Mai Sanyaset.
Jnanam Cha Mai Sanyaset. Translation by the disciples of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, a self-realized person who has cultivated scriptural knowledge up to the point of enlightenment and who is free from impersonal speculation, understanding the material universe to be simply illusion, should surrender unto me both that knowledge and the means by which he achieved it. Hare Krishna. Please join us in saying Guru Pranati of Srila Prabhupada. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshitarine Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langhayate Girim Yat Kripa Tadaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinataranam. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. So, in the previous chapter, the four social orders, the four occupations, as well as ashrams, the shelters were discussed. And at the end, Lord Krishna ended his instruction to Uddhav in that chapter 18, the description of Varnashram Dharma, by saying that one has to take to pure devotional service. So one has to become a devotee. That's the ultimate conclusion. And then he continued to describe that, now I will describe to you, my dear Uddhav, the characteristics of pure devotional service. So how one should engage in pure devotion, this loving attitude with this gratitude and devotion in serving Lord Shri Krishna. the master of the senses. So here, Uddhav, so again, what we have been discussing is Uddhav Gita, chapter 6 to chapter 29 of 11th Canto in Srimad Bhagavatam, comprise of Uddhav Gita. And in this particular chapter, the perfection of spiritual knowledge, we will learn how to develop pure love for Krishna and how to be a pure devotee and be engaged in devotional service eternally. Now there are amazing lessons that have been identified in this chapter. Yet at the same time, when Uddhav is asking these questions, and he is asking many questions in this chapter, he is literally bombarding Lord Krishna with so many questions like, who is a rich person, who is a poor person, who is intelligent, who is a fool, what is austerity, what is penance, what is sacrifice, and what is true wealth, what is best for someone, and who is the best friend, who is an enemy, what is steadfastness. So he's like bombarding one after another, so many questions. So, Lord Krishna, he's smiling when he's hearing Uddhav, because it's like as if Uddhav, he has come up with so many ways to realize from so many perspectives he wants to understand pure devotional service to Lord Shri Krishna. And that is also a very nice sign, because asking so many questions to understand all related perspectives about a subject matter shows that one has a sincere interest in understanding that subject matter properly.
Also, he is very humble.
And also, Uddhav, he's very humble, very tolerant, and of all of them, he is cousin of Lord Shri Krishna. He looks like Lord Shri Krishna. He wears the clothes that Lord Krishna passes on to him, and he's constantly serving Lord Shri Krishna. Yet at the same time, he's feeling a mood of separation. He's in this mood of separation. Why? Because he understands that using the curse of the sages, Lord Krishna is going to go back home, back to Godhead, to Goloka. And when he goes back to the spiritual world, he's taking many of his associates, but not me. How could I be left behind? And Uddhav is feeling in this mood of separation. He's lamenting, he's feeling that how could Lord do it? And then at that time, Lord Krishna, previously we covered, is telling him that actually I took care of all my services. I came here as Vasudev, and I was to relieve the burden of this earth, so I took care of that burden. I relieved the burden of the earth. I even visited Mahavishnu. I visited, all, Pandavas, and I took care of all the asuras, and I took care of so many kings and the demons at the battle at Kurukshetra and so forth. So now the earth is relieved, and now I'm going to remove the burden of love. So Yadavas, they are the burden of love. So they are not actually burdened, but Lord Krishna wants to take them back to their respective positions. The demigods will go back to their demigod positions. Those who have not yet attained pure devotional service. Those who have attained pure devotional service, they will be able to go back home, back to Godhead, along with Lord Shri Krishna. And so Lord Krishna is, agreeing that yes, Uddhav. But he is saying that I have taken care of everything but one thing. That I have not been able to satisfy the great sages at Badrika Ashram, especially Nar Narayan Rishi. So this is where he is passing on a message to Uddhav, that you have to take this message to them so that they feel satisfied. So Lord, when he appears in this material world, it is said that he appears for 3 reasons. What are the 3 reasons? Paritranaya sadhunam, right? To bless his devotees, to again, as well as, that loving exchange with his devotees. Paritranaya sadhunam, to save his devotees. Vinashaya chadushkitam, and to annihilate the miscreants, to kill all the asuras. And when Lord kills or Lord loves, being absolute, both cases he gives them the supreme destination. So both of them go to Vaikuntha. So sometimes when people hear this, they get shocked. Wait a minute, the demons who were killed, they also went to Vaikuntha, and the devotees also went to Vaikuntha. Yes, that is true, because Lord is absolute. So no matter how he acts, when he blesses his devotee, the devotee is purified, and when he kills a demon, because Lord himself is killing, by his touch, the demon is purified. And dharma sanstapana athaya. So the third factor is to reestablish the principles of religion. Yet at the same time, with the leaving of Lord Krishna, Kali Yuga is approaching. And we heard that Krishna so dhamapadate dharma jnana dibhisaha. So again, when Lord Krishna returned to his abode, dharma, the religious principles as well as knowledge went along with him, and many other auspicious qualities. So now, what to do? In this particular case, somebody could wonder that Lord, he relieved the burden of the earth, but then he took away religious principles as well. Because Parikshit Maharaj, what did he see? He saw that Kali was breaking the fourth leg of dharma. And what was this fourth leg? Truthfulness. So in the Kali age, in the beginning of Kali age, there's truthfulness, but as the age would advance, even that truthfulness will go away. And all the other three religious principles, austerity, cleanliness and mercy, they had already been broken. So again, how can they be reestablished? So Srila Prabhupada had this dream that Varnashram dharma should be propagated so that they can be reestablished. For people who are, very much attached to the flowery language of Vedas, they would only look for this process. We talked about this. They want to just go through the staircase. They don't want to take that simple process of entering the elevator, pressing the button and going to the top floor. Well, devotional service is that process. So now that we are discussing devotional service, we need to also understand what is devotional service, right? So, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the golden avatar, Antar Krishna Bahar Radha. So he is Lord Krishna himself with an outer covering of Radharani. And he reveals the pure devotional service, the definition of pure devotional service to Rupa Goswami, Srila Rupa Goswami in Chaitanya Charitamrita and Madhya Leela. 19th chapter is where it is given. And also later on when Rupa Goswami, Srila Rupa Goswami, he writes Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. In the first chapter, first chapter, the 11th verse is about pure devotional service. Anya bhilashita shunyam jnana karmati anavritam anukulena Krishna anushilanam bhaktir uttama. Anya bhilashita shunyam. So Lord did not say Anya bhilasha shunyam. He said Anya bhilashita shunyam. So if he had said Anya bhilasha, means having no desire whatsoever. But he is saying Anya bhilashita, which means when a devotee is in danger, then the devotee can have a desire to pray for Lord's mercy, to pray for the Lord to come and save him. And that is why the word Anyabhilashita is being used, Shunyam. So all other desires, except for this desire that we seek shelter of Lord Krishna and we want him to protect us. This is the only desire a devotee has, which is, to save oneself. Otherwise, he has all desires to love Lord Shri Krishna. Jnana karmadi anavritam. So now Jnana is speculative knowledge. Various, even Sankhya Yoga is included, means from that perspective, analytical knowledge and knowledge from perceptions and so many other forms, the knowledge is there. Not covered by any of this. So what is not covered? Devotion. And karmadi. Karmadi means like, various kind of fruitive activities, not being covered by any of the fruitive activities. And by practicing like artificial detachments and, Ashtanga Yoga and Adi means many other varieties, similar ways. By mechanical practice of yoga like Ashtanga Yoga, by studying of Sankhya philosophy and so on. Anavritam, not covered. So, Anukulena. Anukulena Krishna Anushilenam. So Anukul is favorable to Lord Krishna. And Anushilanam is cultivation of service in relationship to Krishna. So, serving Krishna in a favorable manner. So, a devotee should meditate on Lord Shri Krishna in a favorable manner. Just like Prahlad Maharaj. He was constantly meditating on Lord Shri Krishna. And so, he is glorified to have attained perfection just by remembering Lord Shri Krishna. Right? Kansa was also constantly meditating. Actually, Devashi Narad, when he is in the 7th canto, is describing to Yudhishthira Maharaj, when Shishupal, when he was killed, his head was chopped off, he was beheaded by Lord Shri Krishna at the Rasuya Yajna, and the soul of Shishupal, it became visible to everyone because of Lord Krishna. He wanted to make it apparent to everyone. So that soul, glowing soul, came out from Shishupal's body and entered into Lord Krishna's body. Then Yudhishthira Maharaj was surprised to see this. He said, even a demon could attain perfection. He was able to go back home, back to Godhead. Right? First he thought that he has merged into Lord Krishna. But in reality what happens is, these are Naradan Jai Vijay, Shishupal and Dantwakra. So he's able to go back home to the Vaikuntha planet in his former's Jai till the next time he appears again. So Yudhishthira Maharaj is surprised and he's saying to Devashi Narad that how is it possible? Well, Shishupal was constantly meditating on Lord Shri Krishna. And he actually had received this boon from Padmanabha Vishnu earlier, when the 4 Kumaras had cursed the doorkeepers Jai and Vijay. And at that time, the doorkeepers, when they were cursed by the Chatur Kumaras, even by that one action, when Lord Padmanabha Vishnu, he came to the 7th door and he said that, yes, I sanction your punishment for these 2 gatekeepers of mine. Just by doing that one action, Lord satisfied many personalities. First, he satisfied the 4 Kumaras who had cursed the 2 gatekeepers, right? Second is, he had satisfied Goddess Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune. Because once, when Lord was resting and she wanted to see the Lord, these doorkeepers had stopped her and said, no, you cannot go inside. Lord is resting. We don't want him to be disturbed. So later on, when Goddess Lakshmi was able to, see Lord Vishnu, she said that these 2 gatekeepers of yours, the doorkeepers, they stopped me from entering and seeing you. So you must punish them. So by sanctioning this punishment, that these 2 gatekeepers, they will be going to the material world, taking birth, he satisfied Goddess of fortune. And they were given these 2 choices. Either take 3 births as demons or 7 births as devotees. Now in Vaikuntha we know that everyone is perfect in knowledge. Now imagine, when perfect in knowledge, generally we would think that one would want to take birth in this material world as devotee. But these 2 gatekeepers, they decided to select 3 births as demons, not 7 births as devotees. So when that is there, it is surprising. I looked at it again, I read again and again, I read Srila Prabhupada's purpose. And it became evident that apparently the pain that one faces at the time of birth and at the time of death is insurmountable. It is too grievous. It's a very painful state. 9 births, as we hear in Srimad Bhagavatam, in mother's womb, when a child is there, he is constantly being bitten, he is constantly being tormented by the worms and the bugs, all kind of other living entities who are biting into the soft body of a child. And he's in such a tough, position. He cannot move, he cannot breathe, he cannot, be stable. And he's confined in that state. The time of death, we all know that, It is described in Srimad Bhagavatam that the mucus gets in there. Family members are standing there, and when a person who's attached to the family members, he wants to speak to them, but he can't speak with them. And then he's not able to express his love, and they are not able to express, and they are not understanding what's going on. And this person is feeling, continuous pain and so forth. So it's very painful, birth as well as death. And then Jara Vyadhi. That's like disease state. We all know pandemic is there. Everyone is already tormented. Adhyatmic and mental, the snowball effect is going on, and we are all fearful, in our homes, confined, and using, mask. And now wearing mask is actually a matter of respect. That if we have any infection, we don't want to pass it to others. So this is actually one of the tolerance. A quality of tolerance is visible. If you wear mask and you go out, because you don't want others to be affected. Sometimes we see people, they're like saying, "Oh, we are not afraid, we are not fearful, so we are going without mask." Actually, they're not realizing the purpose of mask, and in ignorance, they are using this mindset. We have to understand that we should not be ignorant. Mask does not protect you from getting infected, but it protects others from you. So when you understand the initial first purpose of wearing a mask, then you realize, oh, wait a minute, do I respect others? Then if I respect others, then I show my respect by wearing a mask, by maintaining, the proper distance, by ensuring that I am, being respectful towards others. Now the second aspect is, how do I save myself? Then there are various other methods that are coming up. Shields are coming up so many ways. Make sure you wash your hands properly. Make sure you even wash your face when you come back home. Because hand wash can take care of the germs from your hand. What happens if they have landed on your face? So it's very important for us to be very, very respectful to others, yet at the same time take all precaution. And cleanliness is next to godliness. We all understand this. So here, when Shishupal was constantly thinking, so these two gatekeepers, they decided to take 3 births as demons, so that they don't have to face that pain. And on top of that, they requested a boon from Padmanabha Vishnu, that they should always remember the Lordship. And he granted them. Now when they decided to be demons, and Lord said that, don't worry, I will come and I'll kill you so that you can come back home. So that is also the absolute nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna. Because whether he kills or whether he blesses, being absolute, the person is purified. So these two demons, means these two gatekeepers who appear as demons in 3 different lives. First time they appear as Hiranyaksh and Hiranyakashipu. Hiranyakashipu is Jai and Hiranyaksh is Vijay. Second time they appear as Ravan and Kumbhkaran. Ravan is Jai, Jai appears as Ravan, and Vijay appears as Kumbhkaran. And this is the 3rd time, in Krishna Leela, they appear as Shishupal, Jai appears as Shishupal, and Vijay appears as Dantavakra. And when they appear in Krishna Leela, they are given almost the same position as Lord Shri Krishna as his cousins. And they are very powerful kings of their times. And so much so that Dantavakra alone would defeat a whole army. He had the strength of 10,000 elephants, it is said. So even they who could meditate constantly on Lord Shri Krishna, but they went back home because originally they were devotees and they were cursed. So the curse was having the effect of demoniac. But even that, in that state, they were under the influence of Yoga Maya, not Mahamaya. So that's another aspect that's there. Mahatmanastu mam partha devim prakriti mashayaha. So all the Mahatmas, all the great souls, they are always under the shelter of devim prakriti, Lord's internal potency, Yoga Maya, not Mahamaya. So again, that's another aspect. Yet at the same time, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is telling that that is pratikul. Don't engage in devotional service in a pratikul manner, it's in unfavorable manner. Rather, it is better to engage in anukulena, Krishna anushilanam. So, that's how we should be engaging. So if a demon is killed and goes back to Vaikuntha. Can you imagine if a devotee is constantly serving the Lordship with love, with gratitude, with this sweetness to please Rishikesha, this master of the senses, how much more potent that would be, how much pleased the Lord would be. Now Lord came to fight with the demons, but that was a secondary rasa, right? Dvanda yudh, anger, ghastliness, all that is secondary rasa. Primary rasa, there are 5 types. Shanta rasa, dasya rasa, sakhya rasa, vatsalya rasa, and then the madhurya rasa, the topmost. And devotees, they want to engage with Lordship, not with Shanta rasa, starting with dasya rasa directly. Not in an inert manner like grass, rather in active engagement. So devotional service is an active engagement. That's why Srila Prabhupada didn't call Bhakti Yoga as devotion or just Bhakti Yoga. He said it is devotional service. Service means that there is a servant who is engaged in serving a master. So it's an active engagement. And it is in a mood of giving. Yet at the same time, it is a privilege. It is not something that you can directly have. So we are seeking this privilege. So for this privilege, we have to call out to the Lordship and call out to our mother so that we can get this privilege. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Mahamantra is this cry like a child that we are calling out to the Lordship and Mother Radha, who is also known as Hara, and with love, Hare, to please engage us in the service of Shishi Radha Madan Mohan Ji, Shishi Radha Shyam Sundar Ji, Shishi Radha Govind Ji, Shishi Radha Gopinath Ji, so that we can get purified of all the anarthas that we have. Anartha. Artha means something that has value. An means that does not have any value. It's a negative. So we want to get rid of this anartha, especially the 6 main ones. What are those? Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsara, lust, anger, greed, bewilderment, madness, envy, all these bad qualities we want to get rid of. Why? Because we want to engage in loving service. Reminds me of a very nice story where there was a devotee. She was being asked by the priest, do you hate Saturn? She said, no. He said, do you love God? She said, yes. And you don't hate Saturn? She said, no. And then the priest asked, how's that? She said, well, while I am loving God, I have no time to hate anyone. So that is the mood of a devotee. That is the mood in which a devotee is constantly rendering loving service to the Lordship, understanding that everyone else is an expansion of Lord Shri Krishna, right? If in Vishnu Tattva form, it's Swamsha avatar, right? Expansion at that level. And Vibhinna Amshas are in the form of living entities. And then on top of that, he has innumerable potencies. Just like material energy, that's also his external potency. Radharani and many of the Shaktis, they are his internal potencies. So again, there are so many potencies, unlimited potencies of Lord Shri Krishna, his unlimited opulences. And so, there is no need to hate anything. Rather, what we need to do is, we have to purify ourselves with the love of Godhead. And that is what we seek, that is what we pray for, and that is why we engage in devotional service. So as Lord Krishna is identifying, again we have to understand that when we are engaged in devotional service in a favorable mood, and Anushilanam has been described in various ways in the Shastras. And one of the ways is cultivation of service in relationship to Krishna by following in the footsteps of Acharyas. So that's an extension, right? Because we want to follow the examples as how others have pleased. That's why in Bhagavad Gita, Lord is saying what you should do, Arjun. You should do this, you should do that. You should not do this, you should not do that. So Yam Niyama have been described extensively. Yet in Srimad Bhagavatam, and Chaitanya Charitamrita, Lord is showing, and his devotees, his close associates are showing how to do what Lord is asking for us to do in Bhagavad Gita. And that is important. And before we understand how to do and what to do, we have to understand why to do it. And why? Because we have been caught in this cycle of birth and death. Janam mrityu jara vyadhi dukkha doshanudashanam. So one of the very important aspect is one should ask that why am I in this material world? Why am I suffering? Why is there distress everywhere? Why is there pandemic going on? Why are people dying all over the world? Why are people, so scared and fearful all over the world? Why is all this happening? Because this is the nature of this material world. When person thinks that this material world is for me to enjoy, for my sense gratification, then that causes these effects to take, to come into action. So there is a cause and effect, or action and reaction. So because we had been misusing this, earth and the various resources of this earth, we are getting reactions. And to be able to pass through those reactions, we have to take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna, and take to the chanting of the holy name. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Now, when we are, Lord Krishna is revealing this pure devotional service. What is pure devotional service? He is describing to Uddhav. And Uddhav is rejoicing, hearing about these instructions that he has to take to the great rishis at Badrikashram, to Narayan Rishi. And of course, this narration of Uddhav receiving this message is being spoken by Shukdev Goswami to Parikshit Maharaj. And Parikshit Maharaj was already cursed that in 7 days he'll die. So he had been fasting at the bank of Ganges, and there was a great gathering of sages. Vyasadev is there, Vasishtha Muni is there, Atri is there, Vishwamitra is there. So again, great personalities, and Sutta Goswami was also there. So later on, Sutta Goswami recites the whole Srimad Bhagavatam at Naimisharanya. And the assembly of sages, their spokesperson is Shaunaka Rishi. So, somebody could say, what about me having so many positions, right? I have so many things to take care of in this life. What about all those aspects? And what will be my position when I am engaged in devotional service? Then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu reveals in Madhya Leela of Chaitanya Charitamrita. And of course here Lord Krishna is revealing to Uddhav a similar message. Sarvopade vinirmuktam tat paratvena nirmalam rishikena rishikesha sevanam bhakti ruchyate. So again, how should we engage in devotional service? By when we are freed of all material designations, sarvopade vinirmuktam. And when our senses are purified, rishikena, rishikesha, and then we rishikesha sevanam bhakti ruchyate. We are engaged in loving devotional service to the Lordship, so service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna. So that is the way bhakti or devotional service, is to be performed by engaging our senses, our mind, body and senses, all three of them. So all our activities are dovetailed in pleasing Lord Shri Krishna. And it is a great privilege to be able to do that. Now to be able to do this, there are some additional requirements that we have to do, which is we have to live regulated life. Right? In Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says that one who sleeps too much, one who sleeps too little. One who eats too much, one who eats too little. One who has too much and one who has too little. Again, all those conditions, like the extreme conditions, are not conducive to devotional service. So one has to be regulated in one's life. And this has also been revealed in Nectar of Instruction, Updeshamitra. Vajo vegam manasa krodha vegam jiva vegam udarapastha vegam etan vegan yo visheta dhira sarvan api mam prithvim sashishyat. So again, one has to, they are vagas, means there are various urges that are there. And one has to tolerate these urges. What are those urges? An urge to speak. Our tongue loves to speak. But instead of speaking about all the mundane matters, we should be speaking about Lord Shri Krishna, His name, for fame, glory, His pastimes, activities, His paraphernalia, His associates and devotees. We should be singing the glories, Sankirtana. That also means glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead we should be engaged in. The mind's demand, our mind is constantly accepting and rejecting. That is the nature of mind. So we should again understand that we have to be favorably accepting things that are favorable to our devotional service and rejecting things that are unfavorable to our devotional service. Anukulyasya sankalpa pratikulyasya vivajanam rakshishyati iti vishvaso gopatitve varnam tatha atmanikshepakaparne shadvidha sharanagati. So there are 6 limbs of sharanagati, 6 limbs of surrender, as Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has explained extensively on this particular verse. What are these 6? Accepting everything that is favorable to devotional service, rejecting things that are unfavorable to devotional service. So this accepting and rejecting is the nature of mind. That is the way a mind works, constantly accepting and rejecting things. So we have to subdue our mind. So that is also one of the tolerance aspect that Lord Krishna reveals in this chapter. Rakshishyati iti vishvaso. Vishwas means having firm faith that Lord will provide protection. Rakshishyati. And then gopatitve varnam tatha. And then accepting the guardianship of Lord Shri Krishna. Understand that He is our true guardian. He is our best friend. He is our well-wisher. Bhoktaram yagatapsam sarvalok maheshwaram surhidam sarva bhutanam gyatva mam shantim richati surhidam sarva bhutanam. So He is our best friend, our well-wisher. And Atmanikship, and surrender everything in service of Lord Shri Krishna. Karparniye, being humble. In that humble mood we have to engage in. Shadvita Shadagya. So that is the definition of true surrender. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his Shiksha Ashtaka, he reveals the mood, the qualification of one who is able to engage eternally in loving devotional service of Lord Shri Krishna. What are those? Being more humble than the grass, more tolerant than the tree, right? And not expecting any result, but ready to give respects to all others. One can eternally glorify Lord Shri Krishna. So here, Uddhav is bombarding Lord Shri Krishna with so many questions. And he is asking that what is the solution? He is asking that how many types of disciplinary regulations are there? What are the regular daily duties that one has to perform? What are charity, austerity and penances and sacrifices? What is heroism? And how can I understand the strength, opulence and profit of a particular person? What is real beauty? What is actual humility? What is happiness and what is unhappiness? Who is learned or who is a fool? What are the true and false path in life? And what is heaven? What is hell? And who is indeed a true friend? And what is one's real home? And who is a rich man and who is a poor man? Who is wretched and who is actual controller? Oh my dear Lord, please, I am your surrendered soul, I am your devotee. Please kindly explain these matters to me, along with their opposites. So he wants to know all these factors from Lord Shri Krishna. And as you can see, this is a great list of things that have been identified. And in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna has already described this, what is knowledge and what is ignorance, right? The matter of pertaining to knowledge and so forth. Here, Lord Shri Krishna is identifying non-violence. Now, non-violence is very easy to say, okay, we are vegetarians, so it is non-violence. But which is the greatest non-violence? And this particular subject matter was very nicely described by His Holiness. What is the greatest violence one can perform?
Bhakti Bhakti Rasamrit Maharaj.
by His Holiness Bhakti Rasamrit Maharaj. He described this, that the greatest violence is one where one can turn another person away from Krishna. Because sometimes people say, okay, killing someone is violence. Yes, it is violence. But we know that because of the cycle of birth and death, one will get next body. He describes very nicely. But if you turn someone away from Krishna, then he is caught in this cycle of birth and death for many, many births. So this is the greatest violence one can perform. So we should be very careful when we are trying to preach others, when we are trying to give Krishna consciousness to others. We should not turn others away from Krishna consciousness. His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj's book, The Ocean of Mercy, he's describing that when he went to the temple, the ISKCON temple in Germany, when he was there, along with his friend, one of the devotee, because they were speaking too much, so there was a devotee who was observing at this center, at ISKCON center. He felt very disturbed and he started talking and he started telling them they should be listening more, and he started saying, such and such person is a Pakandi, such and such person is so and so, and he even went on to say bad things about Lord Buddha. And His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj looked at his friend and they exchanged these looks, and from that day onwards they did not go. So he was repelled to go to the temple, to the ISKCON center in Germany. And when he came back to Calcutta, even though there was a ISKCON center close by, he did not go. But when his friend, who had become a devotee, revealed to him that how wonderful Krishna consciousness is, then he was able to take that step back again. But if his friend had not approached him, can you imagine what would have happened? So we have to be very, very careful when we are interacting with innocent people. Yes, we should avoid the envious people who are envious of devotees, who are envious of Krishna. But for innocent people who are ready to take to Krishna consciousness, who are a great candidate to take to Krishna consciousness, we have to be very, very careful in our dealings. So that's the biggest violence, if we turn someone away from Krishna consciousness or from Lord Shri Krishna. It's very interesting then when we talk about how many books being distributed, and sometimes we hear devotees glorifying themselves or glorifying someone in a great position as how many devotees they have made. Well, sometimes it's also important to know how many people we may have turned away in the process. So we have to be very, very careful. And this is where Srila Prabhupada again stressed the importance of time, place and circumstances. He gave this example where there was a Christian missionary. He had gone to a coal miner's place to preach them, to take to devotional service to Christ. Now again, Krishna in Mid-East is known as Christo, and in West is known as Christ. So same personality, just different names. Just like sun in East is known as Surya, right? So similarly, they're non-different, just different names talking about the same personality. And Jesus is Son of God. So again, Jivera Surupaya Krishna Nityada. So we are all living entities who are eternal servant of Lord Krishna. And Lord Krishna says, Aham Bij Pradha Pita. So I am the seed-giving Father. So He is a Supreme Father. And when Jesus says Son of God, He is not lying, because we are all sons and daughters of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna. So from that perspective, when you see, things become very clear. And one has to engage in devotional service in a favorable manner. So this Christian missionary, when he was speaking to these miners, he was realizing that he is not able to get his message, because their questions were very strange. They were saying, so what is his number, Jesus' number? And because among the miners, everybody had a number. So they couldn't think of Jesus not having a number. And when he was describing that hell is a very miserable place, it is very damp and very hot. So they didn't feel anything different. They were going to the mines when they were mining. The mine was damp and hot, humid. So they didn't feel that it was miserable. So to be able to, when he heard all these questions, he was able to understand their mentality. And then he said, and there is no newspaper in hell. And then so, oh, there is no newspaper in hell. That is miserable place. That is a very horrible place. You can't even get newspaper. Now that was misery to the miners. And that's how he was able to link to them, to be able to preach and bring them to the shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is how we have to understand that time, places, circumstances, they are very important when we discuss about Krishna, his name, form, activities, pastime, so that other can take to Krishna's devotional service. And they can also develop pure love for Krishna. So this is where this chapter we are discussing how to develop pure love for Krishna and how to be a pure devotee. To be a pure devotee means constantly engaging and constantly praying. Srila Prabhupada, when he was waiting to carry out the order of his spiritual master, he was staying at Radha Damodar temple in Vrindavan. He was constantly praying to Srila Rupa Goswami, looking at Srila Rupa Goswami's samadhi. He was asking for mercy. He was begging for mercy. He was crying many, many nights, seeking to get mercy of the acharyas. And that is our only true hope. We are hoping against hope, seeking shelter of acharyas, seeking shelter and mercy of Srila Prabhupada, our spiritual masters, as well as the great devotees, and of them the most merciful, Srimati Radharani, the mother, the most affectionate mother in this universe, who can really, help us in our path of purifying ourselves and enabling others to attain that pure love of Godhead. So that is our true feeling. Now Lord Krishna describes 12 aspects of disciplinary principles and 12 elements of regular prescribed duties. So I'll quickly read through those. So we covered non-violence. So you can imagine, if we were to spend similar time on each of these qualities, we would be here for another 3 hours. So that's why I'm just going to quickly read those so that we understand what these are. Please meditate on these. Truthfulness. Not coveting or stealing the property of others. Detachment. Humility. Freedom from possessiveness. Trust in the principles of religion, celibacy, silence, steadiness, forgiveness and fearlessness. So these are the 12 primary disciplinary principles that we should follow. So again, there is concept of principle and then there is detail. So detail you can change based on the Shastra, Sadhu, Guru and Shastra, but the principles must stay the same, right? Unchanged. Now, what are the 12 elements of regular prescribed duties? They are internal cleanliness, external cleanliness. In external cleanliness is taking bath, keeping our body clean. But internal cleanliness is simply by calling out to the Lordship. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And glorifying Lordship Krishna, meditating on his lotus feet, calling out to the Lordship and reading about his pastimes and his devotees' pastimes. So there are various ways we can maintain internal cleanliness. Chanting, one of the best ways is not to have a negative thought. Always think positive. How can we be positive? How can we be benefiting others as well as benefiting ourselves by engaging in devotional service? Chanting the holy names of the Lord. Charity, sacrifice, faith, hospitality, worship of Lord Shri Krishna, visiting holy places, going on pilgrimages, acting and desiring only for the supreme interest, satisfaction and service to the spiritual master. So again, Lord Krishna again and again brings us back to serving spiritual master. And there are 2 ways we can serve spiritual master. We can serve his physical being, which is Vapu Seva, serving his physical body by, taking care of him. And then Vadi Seva, following the instructions, carrying out the instructions, obeying his instructions and carrying out his order as if they are all in all. So Srila Prabhupada, he is glorified because he wanted to carry out the instruction of his spiritual master. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, in his very first meeting with Srila Prabhupada, had requested Srila Prabhupada to preach this transcendental knowledge in the Western world. And so Srila Prabhupada was carrying out that single instruction of his spiritual master and constantly engaging and glorifying his spiritual master, because when our spiritual master gives us an instruction, it is glorious for us to carry those instructions out and attain perfection by surrendering at his lotus feet. So that is Anushilanam Bhaktiruttama. And then these 12 elements can bestow all desired benedictions upon those persons who devotedly cultivate them. So this is again practice, practice, practice. Practice makes a man perfect. That same concept keeps coming back. Again, this is from Dale Carnegie. But again, this is true because we need to cultivate this. And absorbing of our intelligence in Lord Shri Krishna, that constitutes mental equilibrium. So we are constantly meditating on Lord Shri Krishna. That will enable us to have mental equilibrium. And self-control is to control our senses. What is tolerance? To be, unmoved in happiness or distress. So again, not looking at relativity. So all the questions that are being asked by Uddhava, they're basically related to the aspect that Lord Krishna is explaining, that one should not be affected by the relativity of this world, but rather be engaged in the absolute, and on that absolute platform, the transcendental platform of loving devotional service, and take to the religious path and surrender at his lotus feet. So this is what is the important, and following the purpose, the various instructions of the spiritual master is the true remuneration. So again, that is the true wealth. And so when we continue to engage in devotional service, continue to pray for, again, it is very important that we do it in the association of devotees. So devotee association is paramount. Again, it comes back because like-minded people enable us to stay steady. Have you ever seen Lord Krishna, staying in Vrindavan alone? No, he's never alone. He's constantly surrounded by his loving associates, his eternal associates, who are constantly, performing service for him. And in Nectar of Devotion, Srila Prabhupada reveals that why does Lord Krishna expand? If he is Atmaram, he is completely satisfied within himself, then what is the need? Because he wants to feel happy, and happiness comes in relationship. So every relationship we have is actually a great privilege that we have received. So we should turn that relationship into a loving relationship, into a joyous relationship. It is a great benediction for us to have a relationship with another person, another living entity. And we should be reciprocating in a very loving manner. Irrespective of how the external situations may be, we should be looking at that this is a great benediction. By Lord's mercy, I have received these Vaishnavas in my family. Right? Jivera Surupaya Krishna Nityadas. So every living entity is an eternal servant of Lord Shri Krishna. And if we hold something in our heart against another living entity, who are we hurting? We are only hurting ourselves. We are never hurting that person, we are actually hurting ourselves. When we speak harsh words, then who are we hurting? Actually, sometimes people say that yes, words are stronger than the weapons, but at the same time, our heart is becoming hard. So when our heart is hard, it is not the right place where Lord Shri Krishna can stay. So here we are actually hurting ourselves more than anyone else. So it is for our purification that we have to spread love, because when you spread positivity, it multiplies when you share it. And when you share the sorrow of others, then you divide it and you remove the negativity from this world. So we should be always seeking light, not darkness. We should always be seeking giving attitude, not taking attitude. We should always be seeking smiling behavior, melodious harmony with the nature and with everyone around us, instead of being distressful and causing distress. Yasmano dushte loko lokano dushte chaya. So when we are engaged in this absolute platform, constantly meditating on Lord Shri Krishna, constantly working with his devotees, constantly carrying out the instructions of the acharyas, and with love and devotion, Tranadapi shunichena tarurapi saishnuna amanina manadena kirtaniya sadahri. Then we, in this humble mode, being more humble than the grass on the street, more tolerant than the tree, not expecting any respect from others, sarvopadi vinirmuktam, giving up all kind of designations from this body, but ready to give all respect to others, which means ready to be engaged in loving devotion service, in loving exchange with others. Tadati pratigrahanati, guhyam akhyati prichati, bhunjate bhojate chaiva sadvitam. So there are 6 loving exchanges. Giving of gifts, accepting gifts. So instead of accepting is not taking gifts. When they give, then accept it. Don't demand it, but ready to give them gifts. Guhyam akhyati prichati, inquiring about secret matters for our improvement. And then discussing secret matters, right? And giving of prasad and accepting prasad. Not taking prasad, but accepting prasad. So that is where the loving exchanges happen. And in this manner, we can continue to develop love of Godhead. And when this love for Lord Shri Krishna will grow in the association of devotees, when we are chanting together, when we are singing together, when we are worshipping together, when we are reciting a dham together, then of course it will turn in due course of time into pure love. And we can attain the perfection in this very life by engaging in devotional service, by calling out to the Lordship for His mercy. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, this is where this chapter ends. Please join us for Harinam. Gantra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Anant Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Nitai Go Premanande, Hari Hari Bol.
Krishna.